Hey everyone, welcome back to Off the Couch with the Psych Guys. My name is Timothy Meyer, joined as always by Dr. Konstantin Lukin, and today we have a guest, George Peterson, who recently wrote a book about childhood anxiety, and Dr. Lukin was actually fortunate enough to write the foreword for the book. So we're happy to have George here today. So welcome, George, so we could talk about childhood anxiety and the book. So, Konstantin.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it was a privilege writing the foreword because I really love the book. I love the fact that you're so passionate about it. Just to kind of put some numbers out there, 1 in 8 kids struggle with some sort of anxiety when they're growing up. And to me, it's such a sometimes debilitating and sad thing to see, because anxiety is basically fear manifesting in different ways. So that means that child is really their ability to interact with other kids, their ability to do certain things that they like is in a way minimized because they aren't able to really push through. So that's why this book is so important, because I feel like a lot of the households with kids with anxiety can benefit. Right. I know that your passion goes so far as you actually switch careers.
I did.
To be able to do this. Could you talk a little bit more about that? Because that really speaks volumes about what you want to achieve here.
Absolutely. I'd love to. So, first of all, I'm very grateful and blessed that you wrote the foreword for the book. This means the world to me. I've always been driven by a higher purpose. So, my career has always been within the human, helping people. Mm-hmm. So when I graduated college with a psychology degree, because I knew early on that this was my path. Mm-hmm. And this is my North Star. Mm-hmm. So I graduated in psychology, and I went right into human resources. Talent acquisition. So I was helping people in a different way, mm-hmm. And it was very satisfying for me. And I had an amazing career in human resources and recruiting. We called it talent acquisition. I worked in biotech, so it was an amazing experience. Throughout my career, I felt like I had a bigger calling. And a different calling. Mm-hmm. And I learned this earlier on when I was thinking about becoming a coach and helping people sort of develop and grow, mm-hmm. To be their best selves and thrive. And, a couple of years ago, I had actually had a medical issue, and I had a voice issue. So I had a couple of procedures, so I took some time off of work. And it was a blessing in disguise. Mm-hmm. It was a perfect opportunity for me to reevaluate my situation. And again, the people that I worked with in biotech, in pharma, were absolutely some of the top folks in the world, and just amazing folks, and just very collaborative. And I took this time to at the time. So my son's Georgie, mm-hmm. And he's 10. So at the time he was about 7, and he has high anxiety as well. I think our household has high anxiety. So I have anxiety. I have anxiety, so I really took the opportunity to start to do more research about anxiety, and made Georgie my primary focus, because mm-hmm. I wanted to make sure that he was flourishing and thriving. And I think at that time, we were talking to your center, mm-hmm. and we engaged him because I am a big believer that starting children as early as possible makes the most sense. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. To set them up for success for the future. For sure. So we did that, and I've done a lot of research on it. And when COVID hit, mm-hmm. Like I said, families who have anxiety, it's hard, and and there's no magic bullet, and we do our best as parents. Sure. I'm a parent first, and I wanted to, I did a lot of research in anxiety and how to help my child be his best self inside the house and outside the house, because sometimes kids act differently. Right. They go to school, they hold us together, then they come home. Right. And then sometimes they fall apart, and then we have to help them through that. So the book is about our dog, Maya Grace. Maya was a COVID dog. Mm-hmm. So right. as a matter of fact, Maya was a dog where when we started looking for dogs, we recognized that I think everybody was getting a dog at that point.
think
so. It was you too.
Myself, yeah.
I mean, it was like we were like, well, we want a golden retriever at first, and we want a yellow lab, and everything was sold out.
Right.
But anyway, we were blessed to find Maya in Pennsylvania, a couple hours from about 4 or 5 hours west of here. When we got Maya, I also recognized very early on, literally as soon as I picked her up and adopted her, that she has really high anxiety. So, I'm taking her home, and since then she is the most lovable dog. She is the kindest soul. Her anxiety kind of gets the best of her sometimes, where if we left the house, she would just tear up the house. And so we had this other element with us now. So we have our anxious household, and then we have our new dog, just lovable dog Maya, who's our fur baby, who we absolutely adore. But every day it was something. So not only were we, trying to get Georgie off to school, and my wife has she has an executive job, so she's always very busy as well. And I'm running around in 100 different places. Sure. And then we had Maya. So I sort of doubled down, and I said I want my family to thrive and manage through the best that we can. So. Georgie became my main focus. And it was funny because my wife, Deb, said that because Maya had so many episodes, we would come home and video and post it on Facebook.
Yep.
And we called it originally the Maya Chronicles because every day it was something. It's like, right. Oh, Maya. We would continue to take her to the vet, At that time, it was weekly for like months because she would either chew something or swallow something. So it was a process for our family. And one day, I was sitting on my couch, and I hope I'm answering your question.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
okay.
No,
all right.
Phenomenal.
Cool. So one day, I'm sitting on my couch, and I have all of these ideas. And when I was in the corporate world, I always wanted to be, like I said, so I always knew that I was going to help people in a big way, and I didn't know how. And I wanted to help. My North Star in life was to help millions of people, parents, kids. I didn't know how I was going to achieve that. This was started 10 years ago where I had this vision. So it's kind of coming to fruition, but like I'm driven by sort of helping people. So I was sitting on the couch one day, and I had a couple of these ideas. And I was reading, George and I were like looking through a couple of children's books. And I also write a lot. So I'm a first-time author now, but I write quite a bit about self-development. So something just clicked, sitting on the couch. And I said, you know what? I'm going to write a book. I'm going to write a children's book, a children's picture book. And everyone's like, oh, that's great. Yeah, sure. That's fine. That's fine. But for me, it was a big deal because this meant so much more than just writing a book. This is my purpose. And this helped me learn more. So this process it's also a learning process for me.
I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
Just not just from a publishing perspective, but from a learning about anxiety. And so I've done a lot of research, and it gave me sort of this impetus to like do the research and learn, I'm trying to be the best dad I can. So I started through the process. And the other reason I wrote this book is to engage my son in the process.
Right.
And I thought that was super cool.
One thing that I'm really glad that you bring up this idea of passion and how you moved into this and trying to figure out what anxiety is and how to be able to move through it. I know that you also engaged your son in this creative process. And I think so it's not only as a parent writing it, it sounds like Georgie was also involved and influenced how the book came to fruition. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I think it's so interesting, because I think there's other books out there, and I think it's maybe written by somebody who may know about anxiety or academics like Tim and I, but it's so interesting that you wrote it not only as a parent, but also engaging your son who struggles with anxiety. So to me, it's a perfect combination when these two things can come together. Can you talk a little bit more about it?
Absolutely, I'd love to. So this was a highlight of my publishing process is engaging Georgie, and that gave me so much energy because he would be my sort of like consultant, unpaid, maybe paid in toys
Give him
or treats.
1099.
So I would engage him in every part of the process as much as I could. And I'd say, Georgie, what do you think about this idea? What do you think about this idea? And he'd be like, I don't know. Sometimes he acts like a 16-year-old, right? He's 10, but he's like, I don't know, Dad. That's cool, I guess.
For sure.
I think that's great though, because one thing that we all know is like the best way to learn something is to teach it. And so, not saying that Georgie was teaching you, but kind of in a way, like him being a part of this collaborative process, I'm sure that probably helped him so much, or is helping him so much, whether we realize it or not. Him putting in sort of info into here. I think that sounds fantastic for him and for the book.
I totally agree with you. So there's the one piece of it is to have him engaged and a part of the whole process, and the other piece is to have him as like lead by example, right? And I want to be an example for him, and I want to show him, it's hard work. Sure. And we're going to make mistakes and we're going to fail a lot. And that's okay because we're going to grow through that and we're going to be even stronger. So that's why I wanted to kind of pull him in through that process. So every day I'd sit down and be like, Georgie, can you come in? He'd be he'd be watching a TV show or something. Hey, come in, take a look at this sketch. Let me know what you think. Like, should it be this way? Or what do you think about these words in this way? And it's amazing how clever children are and how bright they are. I mean, so if adults could have the same sort of like focus when in honesty and transparency and nope, I don't like that. Oh, that's good. That's not good. I mean, just very concise and so poignant. And I love that about it.
Yeah. No, for sure. For sure. It made me think about, the whole idea about him being part of the creative process, but also if you in a way zoom out, let's say you zoom out 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, right? You could use this as an example of maybe worrying about whether the book is going to do well or not. What if this goes wrong? What if that goes wrong? And persevering through this by example, by being part of it, you really are embodying what it means to overcome anxiety, which I really think that's such an important point. It's not necessarily in the moment, but if you begin to zoom out and you look back let's say when he turns 18, you say, look, I was also worried about it. I was concerned about it. What if it wouldn't go well? There's so many obstacles, but you and I were able to pull together, keep our worries at bay and push through. I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah. It's like not only the content, but the process. Right. It's like all moving us in the direction where we want to go to.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm kind of loving this right now.
Yeah, awesome,
you know what
awesome.
I mean?
Yeah. No, as a clinician, you get to see a creative process, and you also tackling anxiety at the same time together. I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah, and I mean, I've had a lot of inspiration through this process, and I feel like I can just talk for a long time.
Sure.
So there have been a lot of folks who have inspired me through this process. So, for example, your team is absolutely incredible and was a huge inspiration in me writing this book. So once we actually made that connection with a therapy center, that's when everything just sort of clicked. And so therapy's not just for the kids; it's for the parents. In some cases, I think it's more so for the parents than the kids.
Sometimes.
Not mutually exclusive, but sometimes. And to be there and learn about like how the therapist interacts and communicates and gets down to their level, because I'm a big believer of let's meet them where they are. Don't expect them to come to you, right? It's not the right way to think about it. Like, meet them where they are, get down to their level. And that's the Luken Center has been so incredibly amazing in helping the parental ecosystem like learn and grow as a family, and it's not just about kids.
Yeah. And I really like what you said about getting down on their level, because yes, it's sort of a phrase that I think all clinicians say, like, how do you start doing treatment?
Oh, is it?
Like, we always
meet them where they're
at. But like,
You're
it's
everywhere.
It's so interesting because, like, yes, cognitively I always understood what that meant, but now I have 3 kids of my own, right? About the same
Wow,
age.
good for you. Congrats.
About the same age. And it's really very
Awesome.
You really get to understand what it means, get down on their level. Meaning, like, you sit at their level. There's eye contact on their level. There's the words that you choose that are on the level. So that idea that I think we as clinicians use all the time really is grounded when you work with kids.
Yeah.
So I think that's such a also powerful like moment in treatment when you're able to connect that deeply with somebody.
Yeah, hugely important. And it makes me think about PCIT, right?
What's that? I love acronyms. What's that?
Parent-child interaction therapy,
Right.
which is a whole nother video or something like that. But really, like, that's the essence.
We do
of
have
it.
a
Sounds
demo.
interesting.
We
But
do
we
have a
out
YouTube demo.
there, and he's in it, right?
Are you going to demo it today?
and my kid is in it.
And yeah,
That's
so
right.
so I'm
That's
thinking of
right.
that video because you're
That's right.
literally
on their
meeting
level.
them where they're at.
That's right.
And you did a good job in that video. So.
I do what I can with what I got.
And so did Kristen. You know, I was flipping through this before, and
Cool.
but one thing that I really like about it is, you know, it's really digestible and understandable for kids with a really good analogy to understand, normalize, and cope with anxiety. Right. And I think that that's so important because, you know, well, I think things are changing a little bit nowadays, thank God, but you know, previously there's just so much misinformation about mental health and all this sort of stuff, and so many people and kids experience these types of feelings and these things, and it's completely foreign to them. So not only is the feeling itself terrible and awful and scary and all the bad things, but also the fact that they don't understand it or don't know what to do with it. That if you ask me, I'd say it's times 10. And so to have like a book like this that's like really easy to read, digestible, and understandable, right. I think it's huge.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It just made me think of something. I remember I was co-leading groups for anxiety. And I think kind of the same people kind of typically show up. And there's one person that showed up and said, like, oh my God, I'm so glad to be here. And, you know, everybody was curious, like, what about? And I remember he was saying that I've struggled with anxiety for a long period of time, and I never kind of understood what it was. I couldn't do this. I wasn't going to do that. I always worried. I couldn't sleep. But then coming here, organizing it, acknowledging that's what it is, gives you the grounding, right? The footing from which you can organize, and therefore there's a path forward.
The acknowledgement, right?
Right? There's a path forward, and there's hopefulness once you know what it is, right? When you don't know what it is and you feel like it's all over the place, like it becomes bigger than you. Once you can organize it, acknowledge it, accept it, it's the first step to actually move forward, and that in itself provides hope and provides an opportunity for treatment, be it you start with a book, be it you see a therapist, whatever the case may be. But to me, it's so powerful because without that, people can struggle with it just kind of going forward, unfortunately.
And so I'm going to take something that you said before, you know, Maya, right? Like her behavior, right? I'm assuming you didn't say this specifically, but I'm assuming you would come home and things would be ripped up, or, you know, like the couch would be destroyed, or this would be destroyed.
Tell me what you think I said, and I'll let you know.
So, you know, if you look at just that behavior, you know, one might think, oh, this is just a bad dog.
Right. Oh, so agree with you.
Right? But
yes.
And so
right.
And so if you look at just that behavior, you know, it's like, oh my God, that's terrible behavior. That's a bad dog. But if you boil it boils down to an anxious dog.
Right.
And so similarly, right, the kid who's like not going to school, are they a bad kid, or are they just underneath anxious, right? And I think that is a big problem of our kind of collective emotional unintelligence, that we see these behaviors and we don't understand the underlying emotional mechanisms of them, and then we end up punishing an emotion. So we need things like this, so that way people can understand it and get it in a really easy to understand way.
And it's interesting you say that, because that brings me up to another sort of, as a researcher at heart, brings me to another point, that externalizing behaviors, meaning like oppositional behavior, typically gets the parents to bring in the kid sooner, because there's some sort of a destruction or getting in the way, while internalizing issues like anxiety, depression, things like that usually get less because the kid is not disruptive, right? So that's why I'm so happy about this book and just like this initiative, because they're struggling. And if the parents only bring in kids that are destructive, therefore they're not really attending to another group that maybe are struggling silently. And this is an opportunity for parents, for kids to really get a sense of what it is, so they can either get help sooner or at least acknowledge and know what it is.
So true, so true. So there's this sort of like phrase that I live by, and actually I read it the other day as well, and it's parents sometimes say like, my child is giving me a hard time. Like my child is giving me a hard time, or I'm having a hard day because of my child. Like, no, your child is having a hard time.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's such a distinction between have a parent sort of personalizing and internalizing it versus getting down to the kiddo's level
Yeah.
and saying, listen, like, I know you're going through it's a hard time. Let's get through this together. I mean, sometimes like, parents have breaking points and you have to pick their battles as well.
Right,
so
sure.
like, we're only human, but I think that's something that I try to live by every day. So when I feel like he's giving me a really hard time and I'm like, I can't believe he's like saying that, or, 'cause it happens.
Right.
I'm like, listen, like, I have to remember, like, he's having a really hard time right now. So we just have to figure out how to make it better.
Yeah. No, that's a powerful message in itself, because you're right. There's so many parents that come in, and I'll never forget. I remember I worked at an inpatient psychiatric hospital, and the parent comes and just points to his son and goes like, "I'm not taking him back until you fix him." And he's like,
wow.
it's just that's
Oof.
in itself, right? Like
Yeah.
the damage that's done there by just that comment.
Fix him like the
yeah,
object.
but right. But to your point, if more parents are able to do that, to be able to see that the kid is having a hard time and there's a manifestation that the parent wants to just be able to engage differently, I think it could just go such a long way. Because if you think about it, if somebody's anxious and there's a behavior that's maybe not as effective, and the parent starts yelling, so the message is, right, you have to swallow your anxiety, don't deal with it, you have to
Right.
put it away somewhere, let it come out somewhere
get
else.
over it.
You'll get over it, right? So the idea is that as a pet peeve, I'm sure Tim, you might agree, like when somebody just says like, stop doing that, right? Like it's just such a negative message, because the kid's still going to be anxious, and now you're telling me it's bad to have anxiety. So now you're adding guilt.
Oh, that's true.
So now you got sad because things are not going well. You have guilty because you really shouldn't be feeling it, and then you actually have the problem that you needed attention to, right? So you're just adding negative and uncomfortable emotions, which how it's going to come across. More behavior that's ineffective.
Right.
And then they get grounded.
And then they get grounded, right? And then they go by themselves. What do? They stew, right? Like, maybe sometimes they, have thoughts about the parent, but often it's like, I'm bad, I'm guilty, I shouldn't be feeling this, I shouldn't be doing this, right? And if they're confused about why they're doing it in the first place, they're not even touching, the surface of what actually is going on. They're like on these sort of secondary emotions by guilt and sadness. So there's just such a huge, compounding the issue.
Oh yeah.
When you're doing that.
Yeah, I mean, you're in completely different ballparks of like where you actually need to be.
Right.
Totally.
And it's just really just a lot of misunderstanding, because most folks don't know about this stuff. Although we're all humans, we all have feelings, we all have emotions.
Really great point.
Nobody talks about it, right? And so these things help everyone talk about them more.
Right.
It's really important.
Yeah.
Agreed. And I think, and also that you are a parent and you talk about an anxious household, right? And I think a lot of the parents, could do a better job of acknowledging their own worries and concerns, right? Because what does the kid get, right? If the kid is anxious or whatever the struggle might be, and the parent is trying to come across like this perfect parent with no issues, right? There's no relatability then. Yeah. Right? Like there's no, then it's the parent telling the kid, you shouldn't be anxious. I'll take you here. You'll do that. Right?
And then there's no accountability.
And there's no accountability. Then the kid sees the parent pretending to be something that they're not, right? Yeah. There's no relatability. There's no accountability. There's no connection, right? Can you imagine the power it would have if a parent says, hey, listen, I'm also anxious. Yeah. And I also worry about this. And when I do a presentation, I worry about that. When I write, I worry about X, Y, and Z. When I meet new people, it takes me a little bit of time. And what I've learned over blah, blah, blah amount of years is to do X, Y, and Z. Would you be able to try that, right? Imagine the connection that the kid goes, oh, I'm okay. My dad has it. My mom has it. Like there's unity around it, which I think is so empowering.
Yeah, that's so incredibly true. And I think it is empowering when you have the adults or the parents or the caregivers showing that they also have the same feelings and identifying with the child. And I learned, so I did a school reading last week too, an amazing school in Mawa, and just a lovely class, and the teachers are just exceptional. And they did this thing, this sign language gesture, which resonated so profoundly, deeply profoundly within me, because I think not only kiddos, but I think the community should adopt this, and that's this, right? So that's, I'm making like a waving motion with both fingers, and that means same. That means you and I, right? So when I was talking to the kiddos and I said, hey kiddos, we're gonna talk about worry, and I said, I just want to let you know, I was nervous coming here today. I didn't know what to expect. I was excited,
Yeah.
but I was really nervous about it. And the whole class, they go like this. So I didn't know what that was.
That's amazing.
Powerful.
I didn't know what that was. And I look back to the teacher, and she's like, oh, so that means that means they're being respectful, because they're not going to call out, but they're identifying with you and saying, me too.
Huh.
You and I.
Wow, that's a powerful experience in itself.
That is excellent.
It was so powerful, really. That hit me really, really hard.
Yeah. Wow.
So you're in a school, in a classroom with kids, talking about your own emotions, talking about this book that you wrote about emotions, and all of the kids are and you're talking about your own emotions. They go like this, which is a polite and respectful way to say, "I feel the same feeling."
Yeah, I mean,
that's amazing.
Mind blown.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah. No, it's amazing. It grounds everybody. It gets people on the same page. It gets people engaged. It's relatable. There's connection. There's just so many positives.
So George, this is probably the first of a few, yeah?
It is.
At least that's the hope.
It is. So it's a Wags Over Worries series. So I have a company called that I founded called Wags Over Worries, and it is a website it's an informational website that provides resources and education and tips. And I'm not a credentialed psychiatrist or psychologist. I am a concerned parent,
An advocate.
And thank you.
Yeah.
I'm an advocate. I like that word better.
Well, because it suggests that might not be your specialty, but you have personal experience and you're passionate about something that you want to put out there for other parents to know. Because in a way, if you think about it, as clinicians, we could talk about it, but let's say if we ourselves don't identify with a particular thing, that's how it's going to be seen. But if it's written and talked about from a person who experiences it and has a household that struggles with the same thing, there's power there. It makes me think of like AA or something like that, right? Like when you work with people with substances, right? Like you could talk about it, the research, what helps, but there's power going somewhere where you can relate. So I think that's the power of the book.
I so agree with you. So the website itself, and I'm also passionate about ADHD. So the website talks about anxiety. It talks about ADHD. And how there's some sort of interrelation with it as well, but that's really passionate for me. And so this book is it's a part of the ecosystem of Wags Over Worries. So it's a Wags Over Worries series. There will be a second book. I think I'm on the hook for about 6 books.
Oh, nice. Okay. Nice.
But we'll see. It's funny because as an author for the first time, I said, I have this idea and this vision, and I'm like, I have these stories and I have this message to get out. So let me make it a series, not knowing how much work was actually entailed in publishing the first book.
Right.
But I am excited about the second book. I want to figure out which story is going to be the second one.
Sure. But again, as anxiety can manifest itself in so many different ways, right? Be it just worries about the future, worries about something specific. I'm sure as you move forward through this series, with you working on it, it sounds like engaging your son as well. I'm sure you'll come up with some interesting stories that will relate to so many people out there.
And I think that's the most important part, right? Like relatable, digestible, as the story is, stories that kiddos can read that just hits right to where what I feel really passionate about. Like the education, the emotional intelligence, It's awesome.
Yeah, and I gotta say, and the illustration is also very good.
Oh, thank you. Yeah,
it's very good. It's relatable. It's just for parents, it's engaging. For kids, it's engaging. It's just a great resource.
Yeah.
For
Awesome.
everybody.
Thank you guys so much, and thank you guys for having me. I
Yeah,
really
yeah,
appreciate
yeah.
it.
No, absolutely. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining. As always, today with George Peterson. He wrote a book, Oh My, as part of a Wags Over Worry series, and we're just very excited to see what you come up with next. Thanks so much, George, for coming.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Take care.